Will Work for Patients, episode 27. Give it up, chiro friends!
Thanks for tuning in for another episode of Will Work for Patients, a free advice podcast dedicated to help chiropractors get on purpose and grow their practices. Get ready to tune in and turn up the volume of your practice marketing. And now, turning up the volume on his mic, big-time chiropractic advocate and your host, here is Frank Sardella.
All right, yeah. Well, thank you, Michelle, for that exuberant introduction, and I can tell you I am glad to have a voice as enthusiastic as yours in my corner, because I need more. Are you getting the idea? I'm still fired up from the last episode. Who the hell am I to be talking this way to you? Who am I? I'm Frank Sardella, and I am so happy to be with you and still fired up today in this podcast show episode. Again, I could tell you this show is free for you to not only give you marketing help in your practice, but to keep you on purpose, to keep you pumped up, blah, 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 right? You guys have heard it, 25 episodes up until the last one, and I think you know why we're here doing what we're doing. So I'm here, I'm ready to go. I got my phone on silent, I got my cup of coffee here, and right here in the studio, I am here for the second podcast in a row without a single note, a single outline, a couple of tabs open on the internet browser of things that I vaguely want to talk about. But all I know is I know the title of this show, and it's Speak the Frig Up. Speak the F Up is the title, okay? I didn't say frig when I decided what I wanted this episode to be today, okay? But I want to keep that fire going because I think that we've weeded out anybody who's really not on board. And I'm hoping it's more than I thought. But I'm confident in today's episode that we are minus the victims. Hopefully. Hopefully you victims have hit unsubscribe from this show. I don't want you listening anymore. Is it because I don't like you? No. Is it because I'm kind of a jerk? No. It's because I want you to do what you really want to do. And if it's not this, go find it, dude. Go do what you want to do. Now, why did I say speak the F up today? I'm going to tell you why. It's not just because I've been doing some talks lately, and I've been coaching some people on doing talks lately, and we have a webinar on talks coming up lately. Fine. That's the obvious side. But what happens when something devastating is happening and people stand around and watch and don't say anything? Think about this for a second. What if you were standing watching someone get accosted on the street and you stood there and you did nothing, right? Hey, you know what? Let me give a shout out to Seinfeld. You guys remember Seinfeld? Those of you who are old enough to remember these days, do you remember how Seinfeld ended in their grand show finale after 10 years? They were up in, I think it was in Massachusetts somewhere. And I don't know if it was a joke or a real law or whatever, but they had a bystander law, and these people watched somebody getting robbed, all the crew on Seinfeld, and Jerry and Elaine and Kramer and George were sort of making fun of them, and they were standing by, and they got arrested and charged with violation of this law because they did nothing and there was a law against it. Now, fictional or not, it kind of has some truth to it. And after all of the years of abuse that all this cast, all these characters did to people, and they certainly marched them into the courtroom. And if you haven't seen this or you weren't a Seinfeld watcher, I highly recommend you watch the finale. Although if you weren't a Seinfeld watcher, then you really didn't get all the people that they paraded in. But they paraded in everyone they've ever wronged over the years, and they wronged everybody. These guys were like the observation deck. But the point is that they witnessed a crime and they did nothing. And they ended up in the end, well, I won't spoil it for those of you who didn't see, but they ended up getting charged with this crime. So imagine yourself watching someone and doing nothing about it. Well, where do you draw the line on that? Where do you draw the line on that being a crime? You're going to have your own guilty conscience, and maybe there's no law if you watch somebody getting their purse snatched or getting accosted on the street and you do nothing about it, and maybe you're going to feel a little bad. But how far does it go? What about when you're watching everybody every day get on drugs? I don't mean street drugs. I mean RX. I mean pharmaceuticals. I mean getting prescribed Wellbutrin. or any of these asthma drugs that are out. What are the big ones being pushed? Even Viagra, guys, I can't even keep up with them. If I see another person get on drugs, I'm going to scream. It's crazy what's happening right in front of your eyes and you're watching it. Now, I'm not here to tell you you're not dedicated, but I'm here to remind you of a few things in today's show. And I want to set the record straight on a few things. Now, if this is your first introduction to me, if today's episode is your first introduction to this podcast, I recommend you press stop right now and go listen to episode 26, the one before this, which is put up or shut the F up, and listen to that first so you know where I'm coming from. But today, what we're going to do, this is almost a sequel to that because we're going to set the record straight. I am absolutely fired up to do this with you. And I have a really good point, and I think you're going to like it. Because the way you're going to get fired up and get into an entrepreneurial mindset about growing your practice is to have purpose burning inside you again. And I'm here to give that to you. But the first thing we have to do is we have to shed the layers of, forgive the term, guys, bullshit. The layers of bullshit that have grown on you over your years in practice or even months in practice if you're new. The layers of insurance codes and audits and Obamacare and HIPAA and all kinds of crazy stuff that tries to prevent us from doing what we're supposed to be doing. And yes, I have every right to say that because I've been in this with you for 20 years. I may not have that DC title at the end of my name, but I'm just as dedicated as you are. I've spoken to thousands of people about it, and I'm not going to stop. Nor am I going to let you stop. Right now, I'm applying what I'm about to talk to you about. I've been an innocent bystander, quote unquote, watching people just fail in practice. And by my watching you fail in practice, then I'm watching you fail people you should be helping. And that becomes my responsibility, and I'm no longer willing to accept it. So the word bullshit stands. We're getting a little fire under our butts here. So I want to talk to you about standing by and idly watching what's happening in front of you. I took TV out of my house, you guys. I didn't get rid of the televisions. I have Netflix and all that stuff. But I disconnected the satellite. I can't take watching TV anymore. Not only is it a time sucker, an attention sucker, and I don't have time for it anymore. Just put that aside for just 1 second. If I see one more pharmaceutical commercial, I'm going to throw a TV at a pharmaceutical rep. Okay? I just can't take it anymore. Have you sat down and watched TV even for a half an hour? The amount of false information that's being fed to people, not just in their TV, social media. I don't hang out on my personal Facebook that much anymore. I can't stand it. You get active against pharmaceuticals, they put pharma ads because they think they've profiled you. Because you're talking about pharmaceuticals, or you talk about a condition. Has this happened to you on your Facebook? Check out those ads to the right, man. Okay? So I'm talking about now, I'm not sitting by idly, and I don't want you to sit by idly anymore and watch what's going on. So let's get down to brass tacks and let's look at a few things that I want to talk about. The first thing that I did is I looked up and I read, and I'm going to read it to you right here because I think you need to be reminded of it. The chiropractic oath. And here's the thing. There's something very interesting in here that threw back to my last episode. And it's one of those moments, where you get in an argument with somebody and you just couldn't think of that zinger, and then 3 hours later you thought of the zinger. And you're like, oh, I should have said that, right? Well, that's what I'm talking about here. But it wasn't so much of a zinger as a really good point I could have made. But I think it goes right along with today's episode because we're talking about an oath here. I'm going to talk about 3 groups of people in today's show. 3 groups of people. You are the first group. The first group is chiropractors and people who believe in chiropractic, proselytize chiropractic, talk about chiropractic, eat, sleep, breathe chiropractic, use chiropractic, have benefited from chiropractic. That's group 1. And it is labeled that way in order of importance. It is number 1 group. And you're going to see why by the end of this episode. So I'm going to talk about 3 groups. The second and third groups are of lesser and lesser importance. In fact, the third group is downright evil, and we're going to get into that today. But we're going to clarify a few things about those three groups. And I'm going to show you, per the chiropractic oath and per another oath, how much more responsibility you have than you even thought. And also in today's episode, I am going to inspire you out of that funk you've been in for however long it's been. And I don't care, even you guys who seem enthusiastic, I know there's a little bit of that funk in you too. And if it's not a funk, it's a little bit of resting on your laurels like we don't have a job to do here. And yes, maybe you've earned it in your practice, but for all the other chiros in your neighborhood who aren't picking up the slack, who aren't even listening to this podcast today, you have that much more responsibility to their share that they're not doing. But we're not going to talk about them either. We're going to get them involved. We're not going to criticize them, and I'm going to tell you why. Let me read you the chiropractic oath in brief, all the way through, very rapid fire, and then I'm going to call your attention to a couple of points. So what I have here, in accordance with the law of nature, the law which God has prescribed to all men, and in consequence of my dedication to getting the sick well by the application of that law, I promise and swear, remember, you're promising and swearing, to keep, to the best of my ability and judgment, the following oath. Here's the first point. I will observe and practice every acknowledged rule of professional conduct in relation with my profession, my patient, my colleague, and myself. I want you to put your attention on the word colleague. Okay? I will keep an open mind regarding the progress of my profession, provided that these progressions shall be confined within the boundaries of the chiropractic science, philosophy, and art. Now look, I know there's a lot of controversy, argument, opinions, all that kind of stuff in this area. That's not what today's episode. We could take up a whole show just on that one. But I want to point out that you should keep an open mind. Too many of you are being closed-minded about it. Let's make that another episode. Hopefully it'll be another one with that explicit stamp. I'm actually really glad, guys. Explicit. I got to label the last episode explicit, and this one is labeled explicit. It means that, the gloves are off. No more pretending. Here we go. I will serve my patient to the best of my ability, violating neither his confidence nor his dignity. And in my association with patients, I shall not violate that which is moral and right. Now, I know most of you think you're keeping this one, and I'd like to commend you on doing so just for being the type of professional that you are. This isn't an attack on you today. This is to really split hairs and make sure we're doing this all the way. Here is one I want you to pay particular close attention to. I shall regard and refer to my fellow chiropractor with honor, giving credit where it is due. Keep that one in mind. That should stand out above all others. I shall improve my knowledge and skill, firm in my resolution to justify the responsibility which the degree of Doctor of Chiropractic symbolizes and imposes. To all this I pledge myself, knowing these ideals are prescribed by the dictates of reason alone. And there it is, the chiropractic oath. Many of you may not have heard this in years. A lot of you might think this is just a formality you've gone through. I like to think this is the guidelines for every single CA and even patient. Okay? When your patients is going to refer, they should be abiding by this code. If they're not going to refer and they're just being a patient, they should abide by this code. They should insist on it being applied. And we should make them do that. Okay, what's my point here? One of the things, the line that stood out for me the most in this is, I shall regard and refer to my fellow chiropractor with honor, giving credit where it is due. We're talking about three groups here, guys. And I said the first group is DCs, chiropractors. You. That's the first group. You're all in it together. I know that sounds cliche and pie in the sky and kind of corny, right? But if you look at it, it's true. It's very true. And the fact of the matter is that the profession contains every single person within it. That sounds just ridiculously, idiotically simple, but we have to get it ridiculously, idiotically simplified to really look at it. Why am I saying this? I talked about in last episode who your real competition is. And that's why I want to talk about groups 2 and 3, because I actually made the allegation, and I stick by it, that you had your head in a place that the sun does not shine if you think you have any competition in any other chiropractor in your state, your country, your town, wherever. I don't care if he's right next door to you. To think that he is competition is not only absurd, but it is a violation of the chiropractic oath. And listen, I'm just going to tell you straight up, okay? Remember, the gloves are off. That is just crap. To say that another chiropractor is in competition with you. And it's just not true. It's complete bullshit. So we need to get that out of our minds, because I'm going to put you into a new paradigm here, a new realm of viewpoint. That's what we need to do. We need to look at us as a group, a formidable force. And if you're competing with another chiropractor, how are we ever going to do it? Okay, we're now going to talk about groups 2 and 3, because I have another oath to take up. And I want to point something very interesting out to you that you've probably never considered before. Group number 2 is the medical community. Medical doctors. Okay, let's get it out there. I just said the M word, yes. And by the way, the M word was not why this podcast is marked explicit. Because the M word is not a dirty word, you guys, okay? How many of you have I heard say to somebody, and please tell me if you were bullshitting people when you said this just to try and get a patient. I hope not. Chiropractic first, right? Remember this? Chiropractic first, drugs second, surgery is an absolute last resort. But when you say that, whether you believe it or not, there is some truth to that. There is some use for penicillin when an infection has gotten so bad you got to revive the guy. First aid requires bandages. The medical community has a use. And that's the first thing that we have to realize. We can't just go in fighting everybody. You have to realize it has a use. Surgery is necessary when somebody's been in a really bad accident or something's broken beyond repair. I've seen many of you send someone for back surgery. You refuse to take them on as a patient. And you say, look, it's too far gone. You're bound for surgery. There's nothing I can do to fix it. As much as that hurts you to do it. So let's face it. Let's respect the medical community for what they are. They are there to take care of illness when it's gotten so bad that normal nutrition or chiropractic or holistic care is not going to do the trick. Have they overstepped their bounds a little bit? Yes, but I want to give you something, okay? Because I feel like a lot of you have lost your way. Yes, I said it, okay? I feel like a lot of you have lost your way. Now, look, I'm not just here to piss you off today. I'm just a little pissed off, and I know you can hear it in my voice. This is probably going to last the next few episodes. But this is the level of intensity we're going to get from here on forward. That's my commitment to you. But I want you to really take a look at how you might have lost your way, gotten caught up in taking less money for your services because there's nothing you can do about it. The government is changing and blah, 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 and Obamacare. And the insurance companies are just cutting our payments and Medicare this and, you know. That is a way that you lost your way. Somewhere along the line, you let someone talk you into the fact that what you do is not worth what you do. And you think that you can't ask for the money that it's worth. Why? I'm going to tell you the number one answer I get when I ask this question. And you look at yourself and you see if this is true for you. Why don't you ask for more money? Because people don't want to pay that. Or a derivative of it. Someone is never going to want to give me $2,000 up front. They're going to say, I want somebody who takes my insurance, right? Isn't that what you all say to me? That's what you guys say to me. How much harder do you think it makes my job to have that constantly? If it's just me and you, it wouldn't be so bad. But it's me and hundreds. I hear it every day. It drives me crazy. So I want you guys to get into a group mindset think here of you and every other chiropractor. And how if you change, imagine if all of you as a group change your mindset. Okay, let's not get too far off the beaten path here. I got to talk about groups 2 and 3. Group number 2 is the medical community, who is also bound by an oath. But I also want you to consider that your oath binds you to deal with them. And to educate them and to help them. Because guess what? Many of them have lost their way as well. And when I say lost their way, I don't mean have become corrupt. I mentioned in my last episode, Juliana Owens, very dear friend of mine, and she's our MD referrals coach. She's been in practice. She's co-owned a practice. She's been in the trenches like you guys have. And she went out, and one of her biggest marketing campaigns was to get MDs in her community to start referring patients. And they got great cases, and they had great relationships with MDs. And here's what shocked me. When I first brought Juliana on, and I was talking to her about her program, the thing that took me aback the most, that sat with me, that I never forgot, that I think about every single day since, is that she said, in her estimation, the MDs that she met, the majority of them basically got into the profession to help. Just like you did. I'm going to give you an example, a personal example from my life. I went for a physical. I had sort of gone on a binge of like junk food and whatever. I was burning the candle at both ends, whatever you want to call it. And I got into some pretty bad habits, okay? But I'm going to admit it. I knowingly ingested soda for over a year of my life, like every day. And I went for a routine physical, and my blood sugar levels, when they tested my blood, were in diabetes. This is per the doctor, diabetes type 2 levels. And you should have seen the horrified look on this doctor's face. Now, he was a really, really nice guy. I don't want you to get me wrong. I don't want you to think that I thought I was being snowed in this thing. But what I want you to understand is that this guy had a look of fear in his eyes, but it was a fear for me. It was a look of concern. And he started to tell me about, look, he wanted to put me on insulin and whatever. And I said, look, Doc, listen. I just need to tell you something, okay? And I figured, well, this would be enough. And I said, I know exactly why my blood sugar levels are the way they are. I've been drinking 44-ounce soda every single day for the last probably 18 months. And I know exactly why it is, and I know exactly what I need to do to change it. And I said, and I'm going to, quit that right away. And I'm going to go back to the way of eating that I know to eat. And also I know I have a diet I usually do. Actually, I'll be quite frank with you. Dr. Eric Berg, if you've heard from him or heard of him in his book, 7 Principles of Fat Burning, I do a lot of his stuff. I'm very into what he does. I think he's a genius. And, I make kale shakes every day and all that kind of stuff. And I knew that my blood sugar levels would change almost instantly just from making that change. I knew why, right? We in the chiropractic profession, we look for cause. I knew the cause. This guy would not let up. And when I told him I wasn't going to go on insulin, he was really fearing for my life. You could sense it from him. You know how you just know people, you can feel it from people? This guy was genuinely concerned that he was going to lose a patient for whom he was responsible. So what I did do is I let him know that what I would agree to let him prescribe would be a glucose meter, because he wanted me to test my blood sugar. So I let him prescribe that because I wanted to see too. And I can tell you, over the next 2-3 days, I watched my blood sugar levels drop to normal levels. And they just dropped and dropped and dropped. I got off the soda. I started kale shaking every day. I cut out all like carbs temporarily just so I can get it under control. And I got it under control, and it's been normal ever since, and that's been over 3 years ago. So what is the moral to this story? MDs are bad? No. Why was that guy fearing? What was wrong with that picture? Was that man an evil man who was faking his concern for me, you guys? Is this what we think of them? This guy's concern, I'm a human being, he's a human being. Give me some credit for being able to sense. I know you have this sense too. You sense in another human being that they're basically good, that they are out for your best interest. The ones who aren't are very few, and we know that. This guy was very, very concerned for me, but why? Why didn't he take what I said to heart? It's not that he wasn't giving me credit. It wasn't real to him that I could change that. Why? Because he has been trained. I'm using the word trained, guys, not educated. I want you to get this distinction about group 2. Trained, not educated. He has been trained that diabetes is a disease. Who did he learn that from? I know what your answer is. Oh, he learned it in medical school. Did he? Well, first of all, what are they teaching in medical school? Let's look at a few factors, okay? You just take politics right off the bat. Where does the big money come from for universities, blah, 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 okay? But I'm going to have to spill the beans on what group 3 is. If you listen to my last podcast, you've already forecasted what group 3 is. Group 3 is the pharmaceutical industry, big pharma, RX. RX has a lot of power and they have a lot of money. A lot of money and a lot of power. They have a lot of influence on schools. What do pharmaceutical companies do? They get doctors, they hire doctors and pay them large sums of money. Have you ever been paid a large sum of money and then try to speak out against your benefactor? Have you ever done that? Let me ask you a question. I know you haven't to that degree, but have you ever been put in a situation where somebody did you a favor and then you need to call them on something and you feel like you can't call them on it? Okay? Guys, I know this isn't new news to you, but I'm trying to get you to see this as 3 groups, and I want you to see your responsibility in this. This isn't just something for us to scoff at and be haters of. That doesn't get this job done. And you say, what does this have to do with growing $1 million practice? This has everything in the world to do with growing $1 million practice or more. Because what precedes marketing is your resolve to do it. And your resolve to do it is, yes, it's going to include a marketing plan, but you got to be hitting the right targets to make it. So this group is not just there to be scoffed at. You need to see how you can have some control in this situation. Growing your practice, you say, what does this have to do with getting chiropractic patients? You're going to see what it has to do. But let's talk about what their deal is. They're hitting these medical doctors already in medical school. They're sponsoring testing programs in schools and stuff like that. And students are testing drugs. How do you think they're getting funding? Schools are getting funding for their programs. Somebody's got to bankroll it, and you know who's bankrolling it. This is not a political discussion. I had an urge a moment ago to stand up on my chair, and I'm resisting it because I don't want to make this political. I really want to make this point. Here's what happens. Is they sponsor programs in schools. But guess what? They also hire doctors at large sums of money to pen articles, oftentimes that they go. Don't take my word for this, by the way. Google this. Go do some research. Find out some of the people, some of the rogue pharma reps who whistleblowers and things like that. Listen to some of the stories of what's happened. Oftentimes, these guys that pen these articles, the articles were handed to them to sign practically. A speech, a talk that they give was given to them for them to go do it so that it's a respected colleague who's influencing the medical doctor. Who are you going to believe? Imagine if one of your fellow chiropractors who you respected was talking about some procedure. Wouldn't you trust him? You would definitely trust him. Yeah, of course you'd challenge him. And you know what? It's probably not the best of examples because we challenge each other. Because we know the truth. But here's the thing. The medical doctors, there's just so much propaganda going on. Now patients are even coming to them. What does the TV tell them to do? Ask your doctor, ask your doctor, ask your doctor, ask your doctor. You know how many people are asking their doctor, hey doc, I saw a commercial on TV about Wellbutrin last night. What do you think? Right? I saw a video the other day of a pharma rep actually telling about a doctor who was asking her for advice on what to prescribe, what to do with a specific case. She's going, I don't know. I went to school for poli-sci, I think. She said she was a political science major. Ridiculous, right? Okay, now, I talked about in the last episode, for every MD in your community, there's what? 5 companies times let's say 5 drugs. 25 pharmaceutical reps minimum bombarding his practice. Buying him lunch, giving him perks, giving him pens and script pads and bonuses. I knew a pharma rep who was taking people on ski trips. That's personal experience. I knew somebody who would take people on ski trips. They take them out for expensive dinners, wining and dining. Money you don't have. You can't compete with that. But the bottom line is these guys, these MDs in your community are reading the medical journals, and they've got these not educators, but salesmen training them. I've seen some of the sales training manuals and materials about how to talk to these doctors. I mentioned in the last episode and all over social media, I was sitting at Starbucks next to 2 pharma reps talking about this osteopath they were going to frickin' plow under. I mean, in no uncertain terms. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So group number 2, guys, is not evil. They care and they want to help, and you should be going after them. And those guys took an oath too, but guess what? They lost their way even more because they are at the effect of group number 3 who has a lot of money. You guys, at least you're being fought out in the open. At least you're being told, no, you're not worth it. You get paid less. We're going to change that. But you have to look at these other guys in your community. These medical doctors are bombarded by a group who has virtually unlimited, let's just say it, unlimited funds. Unlimited funds in that battle. And they're being snowed under covertly, undercover, insidiously. Pick a word. It's evil. It's downright evil. So look, when you're sitting there wondering about your practice and going, I just can't expand it, people just don't want to come in, you've given up. Now look, we've weeded out the victims last episode, so I know all of you listening right now are not victims. And I know you'd like to get some marketing advice from me today, but I can't give you another ounce of advice till we get this straightened out, you know? This is the thing. Now, I looked at a modern version. I looked at the original Hippocratic Oath. I looked at it back in the age of Hippocrates. It was written, it mentioned the gods and whatever. It was actually quite interesting. I'm not going to get into it, but you should Google the Hippocratic Oath. And there are a couple of interesting points about it. And let me just look, because it starts out, I swear to fulfill to the best of my ability and judgment this covenant. And there are a couple of points here. I will respect the hard-won scientific gains of those physicians in whose steps I walk, and gladly share such knowledge as mine with those who are to follow. And therein lay the entire point I was just making. These pharmaceutical companies, before they even go into his office, have employed medical doctors, probably unscrupulous ones, or at least ones who drank from the blood of the chalice of Satan. I don't know how to say that. But you understand. These people have already been sold out, and now they're selling out their other doctors. And these doctors, just by keeping that first part of the oath, are being sold out without their knowledge. Evil. I will apply for the benefit of the sick all measures which are required, avoiding those twin traps of overtreatment and therapeutic nihilism. Now, there is one in your favor. My recommendation, my first marketing recommendation to you. Okay, I'm going to stand up on my chair now because I really want to be from a position of power here. I'm looking down on the room. Good thing I have high ceilings in my office. I want to really make this point. Your first piece of marketing advice, and probably one of the best ones you'll ever get, is for you to read the Hippocratic Oath, the oath that medical doctors take. Because you, from now on, instead of scoffing at them, you're going to work with them, and you're going to get them back to applying this the way it should be applied. How's that for a piece of marketing advice? That's what I want you to do. Because you're going to hold them to this second point right here. I'm going to read that again. I will apply for the benefit of the sick all measures which are required, avoiding those twin traps of overtreatment and therapeutic nihilism. Now, what oath do you think RX is following? What oath? Guess what? There's no oath. There's no laws. There's no nothing. It's crazy what you'll find out there. One of the things that shocked me in a documentary I watched was about the number of trials they have to do for a drug. Let's say they need 10 positive trials to get a drug approved by the FDA. You could say, well, that's pretty good. They come in short and they get like 7 out of 10. They're not going to get approved. Well, guess what? They're guaranteed approval with that. You know why? Because they can do as many trials as they want. They could do 100, and if they got 10 positive, they get approval. So there might as well be no approval process at all. What oath are these companies following? It's probably set by the Federal Reserve or something. I don't know. I don't want to get political in this thing. The bottom line is they are not following an oath. And they are trying to squash the Hippocratic Oath in doctors. They are going after that one right there. That point, that precept. Avoiding those twin traps of overtreatment says it right there. Right? Overtreatment. You know it as well as I do. Imagine if you overtreated your patient. Imagine if your patient needed 30 adjustments and you gave him 60. Well, we're not talking about the same ballpark, but you just wouldn't do it. Right? You wouldn't say, well, I want to make more money off him, so I'll just extend his corrective care by double. Right? You probably just threw up a little bit in your mouth, right, when I said that. Even implied it. Okay, let's look at the next point. I will remember that there is an art to medicine as well as science, and that warmth, sympathy, and understanding may outweigh the surgeon's knife or the chemist's drug. Okay? Guess what? This guy that gave me my routine physical, he was applying that one all the way. I wanted to high-five him. Okay? I really wanted to high-five this guy. I really wanted to high-five him. But RX is the third group, and they are trying to squash, absolutely squash, this oath in doctors. Now, here is the one. I'm not going to read you the whole oath. I want you to look it up and study it. But there is one point that I want to give you in this oath that I want you to take to heart. I think you should print it out and put it up on your wall. In fact, I'm going to do the same thing. I have tons of quotes on my wall. I think this is going to be one of my quotes. I think you should have a chiropractic oath and a Hippocratic oath next to each other on the wall in your office. But here's the one I want you to take to heart. And this is we're going to rest the whole episode on this point. This is something they're agreeing to. I will not be ashamed to say, I know not, nor will I fail to call in my colleagues when the skills of another are needed for a patient's recovery. Now, when did you adopt the idea that you are not, by definition, a colleague of these guys? I hear you guys talk about all the time. People say, well, medical doctors and chiropractors aren't the same thing, blah, blah, blah. How do you answer that? Well, we all have to take, everybody to get the title of doctor has to take, 3 board exams, is it? And the first 2 are the same and the last one is specialty. Is that how you say it? How does that make you not a colleague? When did you believe you're not? You took the public's view? The public doesn't think that way of you. Somebody's promoting you that way to the public. And they may or may not buy into it. You follow? I want you to take this one to heart. Now, this does not mean go to medical doctors and say, you know not. You know less than me. That's the other violation I've seen you guys do, is tell somebody that they're wrong. How do you feel when somebody comes in and tells you you're wrong? Are you going to be open to what they have to say? Are you going to suddenly adopt their philosophy? No, you're going to be like, get the hell out of my office, jerk. Right? And I think I'm being a little nice because I don't want to get a double explicit label on my episode here. But the point is, guys, is that these guys have it right in their oath. There's a pride thing involved here. And we have to play into that. Does this mean you have to go after every medical doctor in your community? No. What is the moral of today's story? Well, let's get right into the last word. The recap is we have 3 groups. We got chiropractic, we got medicine, and we have RX. 2 of which are governed by oaths. 1 of which is governed by immorality and greed. So the way I see it is, you are not in competition with your chiropractors. You need to band together. And you are not in competition with medicine, and they are not your enemy. You need to band together. And together, you can defeat RX. You're not going to defeat him in a war. I said this last time. You're not going to defeat him in a war. There's no way you could have enough money to beat them. They just have too much money, no matter how many times you sue them, whatever. The way you win is to start getting people well and living a wellness lifestyle and then helping others to live a wellness lifestyle. That is the tippy top of tops. Your best patients are not the ones who lead a wellness lifestyle. They're the ones who want to help others to do so. And you need to create a world of those people. And if you do that, RX withers away and dies. And that, with an exclamation point and a bullet, is the last word. Now, I'm going to tell you, listen, subscribe, download, share. These are very important episodes for you to do that. But I am going to admonish all the last minute, just hanging on by a scrap of a thread, maybe victim, maybe not. If you're teetering on that and you have any inkling that you're a victim, please unsubscribe. Don't listen anymore. Because the next number of episodes, guys, we are going to get really excited. We're going to get aggressive with our marketing efforts. Because the point of today's episode is that you need to realize your responsibility and stop being a bystander. Every time you back down, you're being a bystander. You're watching people be tortured and killed, not by medicine. Medicine is not your enemy. They're not killing them. RX is using medicine as their puppet to do it. But the majority of these people want to help, and you can elicit their help. The moral of today's story is not to go out and try to get MD referrals or whatever. Do I think you should? Absolutely. I think you should be exploring every avenue in every waking moment of your life. That's the generation you live in. You chose that when you went to chiropractic school. You realized that. This is a key generation of chiropractors right here. We have a job to do, and there are very few of us, okay? Just so you know, let's not count those in institutions waiting to graduate. There are 55,000 practicing chiropractors at any given moment in the United States. How many pharmaceutical reps do you think there are? You go to school for that. Pharmaceutical rep went to school for poli-sci. Comes out. How easy was it for you to get that first job? How easy was it for you to start a practice? Did you have any money? No. You had to borrow. Or you had to take a crap associate job. What about the pharmaceutical rep? Company car, $75,000 a year, another maybe $20,000 in bonuses, making money hand over fist, getting free dinners, car insurance bill paid for, gas paid for, everything paid for, get to go on ski trips. It's like a Vegas lifestyle, man. But whose team are you on, right? That's where we're going to be going in this podcast, you guys. We're going to get so ruthless about our marketing efforts, and we're going to do it together, and I'm going to make sure that you do it. And I guarantee you that intensity. Listen, I want to put this plug here. I never plug myself in these podcasts, but I just want you to know that we are getting really, really intense in this. And I would love to work with you. If you're on board with what I'm talking about, I want you to call me and have like a free 15-minute call. And when I say free, I just mean like, look, I don't want you to think there's any obligation. Okay, I'm not here to sell you. I'm here to see your resolve. I would just be thrilled to talk to you for 15 minutes, even if we never spoke again. Email me, frank@screeningexperts.com. And let's set up a time to talk. Because I will be this intense with you over the phone, I can guarantee that. And maybe we'll talk. Maybe we can work together. Okay, but I just want you to know that I'm here for you. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next podcast. Hey, remember, this is a grassroots effort to make a chiropractic world like we all want. And I really mean this when I say it this time. Let's make every episode count. And I know I can count on you, those of you who are left. So, my friends, we've come to the end of a deeply profound and motivating episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. On behalf of myself, our announcer Michelle, and the rest of the Screening Experts crew, I thank you so very much for joining us, and we'll see you soon for yet another kick-ass episode of Will Work for Patients. So long.
Be sure to subscribe and share. Will Work for Patients has been brought to you courtesy of Screening Experts, bringing unscripted simplicity to chiropractic marketing complexity. Today's episode, copyright Screening Experts LLC, musical score composed and arranged by Frank Sardella ASCAP. For more information, visit screeningexperts.com.